the Los Angeles Chargers here, Joe.
The Chargers, which, by the way, I saw.
You're probably going to say what I'm thinking, but go ahead.
I saw Colin, right?
Yeah.
Today, and he had his show, and he ranked. He's kind of doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Like he's picking division winners and all that, right? So he went division by division in the AFC. He gets to the AFC West. And he says, obviously, the Chiefs, because why not, right? They're the kings of the crown.
Kansas City Chiefs.
And they can't be moved. They're always winning the division. So he's going to have them in there once again. Second, he puts the Chargers second. And I found his decision to put the Chargers second interesting because he's like, oh, well, Jim Harbaugh's always been a winner. He was a winner before he left the league. And everybody, wanted him then as a head coach. Then years later, comes back. I think he's going to continue what he left off at. That's your reasoning? He's like, well, receivers, they still got to add to it, but they drafted one, so they should be fine. So I just thought it was kind of funny how he gave very little details in terms of his reasoning to have them finish second.
Joe, sometimes that's the way it is. Look at Colin. Colin has said that he was big on backwards hats. If you wear a backwards hat, you obviously aren't paying attention to the game, and you're just la-di-da, and you're not an elite quarterback. Hat forwards, Aaron Rodgers, hat forwards, Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he gave a nonsense reasoning.
Ever since Russell Wilson turned his hat backwards, not any good anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm working on my
terrible.
Right? Yeah, and that's what he just needs a hat, to try and justify his choices. But guys always have their favorites, and it's an easy one. He probably didn't study enough on the Chargers, and Jim Harbaugh coming back into the league. He's a winner. He's always been doing this. He's got the pedigree. His brother is a winner. They're born into this, and he's going to continue on.
Yeah, it wasn't that in depth, but my thing is I said, oh, he's got all the pieces that he needs to win, and that's that. Let's talk about the pieces to win.
Yes, that's right.
Offensive line, check.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Right? Like it's a check. Like they get they have Rashawn Slater. They drafted Joe Alt. Like now they have bookend tackles. The interior of the offensive line is pretty darn good. The only question mark that I would say is Trey Pipkins, who formerly was a right tackle. They kicked him into guard, thinking that he's going to play much better there. But very solid offensive line. And that's what Jim Harbaugh needs to do his run-heavy style offense. And when you have an offensive coordinator by the name of Greg Roman, formerly of the Ravens offense, and how they ran the ball with Lamar Jackson, it's interesting because now you're having two like-minded individuals that love to run the football, pound the rock, grind yards out, get first downs, and keep the clock trimming down. Check. When you look at tight ends, now Jim Harbaugh loves tight ends for more reasons than you'll ever know. He ended up signing a couple tight ends in free agency. Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst.
What?
They had already on the roster a guy by the name of Donald Parham, who was a receiving threat and a major one at that. But you put those three tight ends now in his run-heavy scheme, he's going to have double tight end sets. He's going to have them leak out for passes. He's going to have them stay in block. He's going to mix it up. But one thing's for sure is that he's going to keep somewhat similar formations and just pound the rock with guys like Gus Edwards now in the running back room. J.K. Dobbins, he signs in a very, very low number for a salary, saying this is your last-ditch effort to make the team and be productive in the league. And then they drafted a guy by the name of Kamani Vidal, who I really liked in the draft, a guy who I think is going to be special down the road. But again, he's put together some guys that might not be huge names, and some have struggled with the injuries, but he's saying with my offensive line, with my tight ends, with this backfield, I can move the ball. I can score points. I can get first downs. And when you say, oh, but what about the receivers? Well, let's take a look at the receivers. Josh Palmer returns healthy yet again, but a guy who often gets injured every year. Is he going to be able to last this year now that maybe he doesn't run as many routes? Maybe. Quentin Johnson, who they took a year ago, still hasn't developed into that number one caliber wide receiver, a guy who struggles with route running, sometimes catching the ball. And Ladd McConkey, they drafted out of Georgia, the slot wide receiver who's very quick, very fast, very shifty, a guy that, in a similar mold that he had back in Michigan, that I think is going to be able to become that go-to guy to move the sticks and whatnot. And the quarterback, Justin Herbert, very good quarterback. I have no issues with him, but I just feel like this year his talents are going to be used to the fullest because of this offense. Not necessarily not him.
Right.
I think just because of the way Jim Harbaugh's mentality is on the offense and how he wants to just kind of grind games out, score, run the clock out, that type of mentality. I think Herbert's not going to have as great of a year just because of the change of the offense. So I like the mindset of Jim Harbaugh. I like the fact that he just paid close attention to the positions that were important in his offense. But what happens if the run game gets stopped? You play a really good run defensive team. They're slowing you down. You're going 3 and out more often. Now, guess what? You're down by 2 touchdowns. Now you got to turn it all around, and you have to attack in the passing game. So I'm not so sure. We've seen teams like this before where they do well as long as they're leading, but the second that they get behind, kind of like the Ravens in a sense, the second they get behind by a couple touchdowns stuff, they're not a passing team by any means, or come from behind win team. Chargers might struggle in that area where if they get caught behind and they're not ahead, where they might struggle to come back and try to win the game in the end. So I think that this is a big experiment by Jim Harbaugh, taking that same mentality that he had in college to bring it into the NFL, knowing that in today's era, it's a pass happy league. Yeah. It's no more this grinding out, run the clock down, score points and win that way, and low scoring. It's high scoring. Score quickly, get the ball back, score again. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out. He has the talent to do what he wants to do. I'm just curious if it's going to sustain and last.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it depends on if, to quote the great LL Cool J, if you can do it well, that, you could get it done. Look at the Baltimore Ravens. I was surprised to look at this offense last year and how quickly they could score by running the ball. They could go just pound the rock right down so fast in like a 2-minute drill by running. I was so blown away. I was like, I've never seen anything like this before. Now, will Jim Harbaugh's offense be the same? Not so much, because you don't have those same type of running backs.
You don't have Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and you don't have Lamar Jackson. And you don't have, again, you got former guys that used to play for the Ravens, which we wonder where he got that insight on for the running backs. But yeah, but I mean, so with a good running game, you could see that you can score, but I understand what you're saying, Joe. And we've talked about this with Derrick Henry with the Titans. Yes. When it all comes push to shove, you got to be able to get it done. You do have the quarterback. Check. That is there. But again, who's he going to rely on? From what I'm hearing, even sometimes, from insiders, they're even saying that Quentin Johnson is going to move out of the starting lineup even too. So that would be a kind of a surprise if this guy isn't really moving up and performing well. Like you said, then what do you got?
That's a problem.
That is a problem.
And that was a problem even in the offseason where there was experts talking about this scenario and saying, well, Chargers, they're picking 5. They got to take Malik Neighbors if he's there. They can't let him slide. They got to take him. They got to take one of the top end wide receivers. They can't let them go by, or even Roma Dunze.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we called it here first. Like, we were like, they're not going wide receiver. They're going to go offensive line. That's what they need. Mm-hmm. And that's their most important position right now. So not going after the receivers early and waiting into the second round, which was fine. You ended up coming away with Ladd McConkey, who I think is going to be an excellent receiver for them. But after that, you got Quentin Johnson still hasn't answered the call. Josh Palmer's always injured. DJ Chark is always injured. Mm-hmm. Brendan Rice, who I really like. I think Brendan Rice could actually earn a starting job. And a guy who I think fits Jim Harbaugh's offense extremely well, because not only can he block, he can do everything well. He runs routes well. He catches the ball well. So that's probably the only silver lining here, is that you do still have guys maybe behind your so-called starters that might evolve to be something special for you. So offensively, I think they're okay with the style offense that they want, but I just kind of worry about for Chargers, like now when it comes to grind time where you're down by 10 points, there's only 3.5 minutes left. You got to throw the ball. You can't run the ball down the field. You just can't. You're going to run the clock out. So are they going to be able to get to that point where they become difference makers? So it's going to be a challenge. I mean, it's not like it's not going to be for them, but if they can stay ahead, I think that's where they can win all the games. Is if they can stay ahead and chew the clock, then most likely they'll win.
Right, Joe. And again, not only just the offense needs to get it going. Last year they were 21st, but the defensive side too, for some of the players that they have.
The most overrated defense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the key to this team altogether, which has always been the storyline for the last, I think, 7 years that we've been doing this show, is healthy. I mean, some of your key players are never out there. No. Joey Bosa's never out there. Derwin James, always injured too. I mean, things like that. Khalil Mack is a shell of his former self. You know what I mean? So the defense really needs to step up too, because the way your offense is now, it was geared up before. The way we saw that Justin Herbert with the weapons with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, they could go toe to toe and score back on the Kansas City Chiefs. They showed that they can beat them.
Yep.
Not so much now anymore. It's going to be tough.
Completely different now. And I will say this.
But I tell you what, they probably will go for it less on fourth down, though.
Definitely less. I'm willing to bet on that.
That should be an easy prop bet.
But yeah, Jim Harbaugh is not dumb when it comes to head coaching and making decisions. So, but the one thing that I will say is that the Chiefs did struggle with that. They struggled when teams were able to run on them. And when you have a physical team like the Chargers are building right here with their offense, at least, they had struggled. Like when the Raiders beat them on Christmas Day, that's what they struggled with. They didn't have an answer for the physicality in the running game that the Raiders had. Now that had to open some eyes in that game where the Chargers got to be feeling pretty good about themselves when they do play the Chiefs. Yeah, they can go toe to toe with them in terms of passing. But guess what? Now it's a different mentality. Now it's more physicality. It's beating you up in the trenches and running the ball down your throat, where I think that's a recipe to maybe pull off a win or two against the Chiefs. So maybe this could work out for them in the long run, but it remains to be seen. But they got to get it done on the football field. And then defensively, just like you brought up, injuries were a big problem. And Joey Bosa has been injured so much. A guy that makes a ton of money is not available to you. I thought for sure that they were going to look to trade him this offseason. I thought for sure. Instead, they work a deal, keep him there. Same thing with Khalil Mack. They keep him there. But these two guys, Khalil Mack is playing well beyond his years. Like he still plays. He doesn't play like a 30-plus-year-old guy. Like he's much different, but he's only one guy. We talk about Max Crosby with the Raiders. Khalil Mack's like pretty much the only one doing anything on that D-line. Basically. So needs Bosa to stay healthy so that he can at least help Khalil Mack. And then, they bring in former Michigan players, former Michigan star Junior Colson at linebacker. Obviously knows Jim Harbaugh extremely well. And going to pencil in at the starter right away. And rightfully so. Was seen as one of the top-end linebackers in this draft. I think he's going to fit in extremely well with this defensive scheme that they're going to put into. And then other than that, like they have a couple of guys who I feel like name-wise, people don't realize who they are. But guys like Poona Ford, who I think is an excellent nose tackle. Morgan Fox, who formerly of the Rams, then went to the Panthers, now with the Chargers. This guy's an underrated player. Guy's a pretty good player that is going to help out this defensive line. What looks like that they're going to go to a 3-4, which is interesting. So you're going to have Bosa standing up on the edge. You're going to have Max standing up on the edge. I think this is going to play into their skill set way better than just putting their hands in the dirt and going. So to have the 3 down linemen, have Bosa coming off the edge, have Mac coming off the edge, they're looking to create pressure on people and offenses. So the big key on the back end is how healthy can they stay? Asante Samuel, often injured. Derwin James, like you mentioned, often injured. They do have some great talent, and they managed to bring in a guy by the name of Christian Fulton from the Tennessee Titans. One of the better corners in the league, guy that kind of went under the radar this past season. And they managed to get him to put him opposite Asante Samuel. Again, it's all going to come down to health, and it's all going to come down to understanding the new scheme that's going to be implemented and working together. On paper, we've said this time and time again. They have the talent. They could be so much better than what they have been. We got to see it, though. We got to see it on the football field. If injuries creep up on this team yet again, I'd fire the whole training staff. I'd hire new people because something's not working in LA, and it can't be the talent that they have. So things have changed. Yes, it's going to be a different looking team for this season. I'm just curious to see how Jim Harbaugh navigates it. The offense plays against the teams that they're going to have to face, and to look to see if this defense gets any good.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.